Hello, everyone. Welcome to this reflective rambling. Basically, if you're not aware and familiar with reflective ramblings, it's basically me talking about my own personal experience and maybe correlating it with some sort of thing that you might be able to benefit from. But it's basically my way of informing you on my own personal stuff and trying to have some sort of message to take away from it. So for this week, I basically am going to talk about a little bit of a fear and struggle that I have. This little thing that irks me and eats away and kind of bites me and nibbles on my toes when I don't want it to. And that's this sort of inadequacy that I've felt in my life with not having a job, being employed, being part of the system, being in the rat race. I'm 21 right now. Of course, all pressure isn't exactly crashing down on me when it comes to me needing to go and establish a career and be firm in that. But it's still something that personally I feel bad about that I don't have currently. I've worked before. I had a job at a doggy daycare for a little bit, but that was a very negative experience for me that maybe I'll talk about in the future. And also, I worked with drywall with my dad for like 2 years. So I have worked, and some of it I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy the doggy daycare because the work environment and also the treatment of the animals there was, and the workers was less than optimal, I'll say, unfortunately. But work environments, basically. When I was there, I felt this sort of fear, inadequacy, this soul-sucking presence, this lack of spirit for me, personally. Not to say that that's just how it is, but for me, I felt as if my spirit was being sort of violated, thrown on the ground, and stomped on. It felt, honestly, it felt terrible. I would walk into the workplace environment, the doggy daycare environment, and I would see my environment, naturally, and I would see the workplace, and I would see everyone in there, and immediately the feeling that I would get is, fuck, I hate this feeling. This is horrible. It's like I was drained of all my life, because I knew for 8 hours, I was going to be here in this gross environment for me, this place where I feel like I didn't belong, with people who are cool people, but I didn't feel comfortable around, feeling like I was not good enough, and feeling like I'm going to fail and maybe get fired at any moment. Never being able to feel like I'm okay with how I'm doing there. Feeling like a piece of shit for ever asking a question or attempting something. I always felt like I was doing the wrong thing. And it wasn't just that. There was an aura about it, a vibe. I couldn't feel safe and secure there. And it ended up, unfortunately, ending in me getting bit by a dog and getting stitches and 2 weeks after I quit. And that's my one experience in a work environment. That's kind of the experience I have with it. The life I've lived, that one moment, it seemed to change my view on things. I mean, I already felt very uncomfortable with being in that place. From the moment I got in there, I knew that it wasn't right for me. Whether that's just because it's not the right type of work environment, or if maybe that sort of system isn't for me. It doesn't feel like for me. But I couldn't know. I can't know that stuff. I haven't attempted it again, and there's many reasons for that. One reason is that I'm just fucking scared to do it. I'm afraid. Not that I'm afraid of work. That's never been the problem. I've loved to work. I work every day on this podcast. I work at exercise and weight loss every day like a motherfucker. I do everything. I have other hobbies, drawing. I have all the studying that I do for my own personal interests, like philosophy and psychology and mental health, and just human studies, just trying to make sure I have my own therapy and treatment that I do. I have a lot of different stuff. I work literally from when I wake up until at the latest 10 o'clock, if you count exercise. I work a lot. In fact, I'll admit it, I'm a workaholic in many regards. I am. I often feel like the standard I hold for myself is so often hard to achieve. And even when it is achieved, I have to raise the bar, because if I can achieve it, it's not good enough. And I sort of have alluded to that before. I think I made a post about that. That this feeling that you have when you're, I guess, feeling inadequate all the time. It makes you do drastic things. And it makes you set standards for yourself that are literally designed to not be achievable in a way. Or at least to make it so difficult to achieve so you can feel like you're above and beyond, so that you don't feel so far below. That's kind of the way that I go about it. And so me not having a job, me not being actively employed with a paycheck is so fucking demoralizing. It is. Because it feels like every single time that I go and do something, that I go out in the world and I'm walking around and I'm saying, wow, I'm fucking doing great. I'm a beast. I'm a monster. I'm literally pounding it and doing everything I ever wanted to do in the best way I can. I'll have that joy taken away from me, snatched away, just for the sole reason that I don't have a paycheck with a boring job that I don't want to do. And the idea is scary. It's scary because it implies that I have to not enjoy what I do in order for it to count. In order for me to feel like I'm doing something worth my time and impressive and something like a big, strong adult would do, I have to not enjoy it. I have to be miserable almost. That seemed to be a very cynical view of the world. It doesn't seem like it's very kind or respectful to myself. Because it's not. And the people around me, they maybe have held this standard at some point. They have. I mean, there's a reason why I feel this way about myself. Over my years, I've been conditioned to think a certain way. Whether it's my own decisions or not, though, in this present moment, the people around me recognize me for what I've done. They recognize my efforts and the growth, the tremendous growth I've had throughout this year specifically. Yet I don't feel that same exact way. I don't. Because in certain one-off moments, people have diminished that. They have, indirectly or directly, throughout my whole life. And so I sort of cling on to that. And now I do it myself. Because what's my accomplishment worth if it's not seen by others, right? That's the mindset. And it's a painful one to have. And I so desperately want to have like a steady income as well. Not just feel good about myself, but have a way to make money so I can support this podcast or get all the things that I need for my other hobbies, or just feel secure to pay some bills and actually feel like I'm fulfilling some responsibilities, some very scary responsibilities, but feel like I'm doing it because I love to conquer those fears. I do, or at least go at them, attempt to, but I'm not doing that with the job. And it's honestly a very crippling feeling. It puts a blockade on any sort of easy path to happiness and fulfillment. It really does. And, many of us go through that. Many of us achieve things, and whether big or small, we achieve them, and we still feel some sort of unfulfilled feeling, basically. This feeling as if we're still not doing it right. Yeah, maybe we went and did that, but that thing over there, I didn't do yet. So that thing over there, fuck the things behind me. I'm looking forward, and that thing is very far away. So I got a lot of time before I have to, achieve the thing. But during that time, it's going to hurt. It's going to be a long, arduous journey of beating myself over the head with shame and guilt, which I fucking talked about in my last episode. I talked about in my last episode how this shame and guilt is not productive for these sorts of things. And never did I say that I was not guilty of it myself. Of course I am. That's how I know this stuff. That's how I am able to talk about it. And that's the problem, because I want to be able to apply that sort of view on things to myself. When I say that shame and guilt is not something that's going to promote this productive way of living, but the things that promote it are the positives and the positive or reinforcement of accomplishing things so you can ride that wave to success. When I say all that stuff, I want to be able to walk that walk as much as possible. I said in that episode that I do that myself, that I struggle with this sort of shame-filled, or fueled rather, fear-fueled way of motivating myself. And I don't want that because it's counterproductive. It puts that blockade in between me and joy. And how am I ever going to feel good about these incredible accomplishments I've had in my life from what I used to be? A 350-pound drug-addicted alcoholic who struggled to even regulate his emotions enough to have coherent conversations with people, to have stable relationships with people who would get hate-filled and angry and react through that anger in a way that was detrimental to everyone involved, to this kid now, who manages all that stuff so well, who's lost all the weight, who's lost 100 pounds. The 100 pounds he gained from his bipolar medication, he lost in 6 months. Through exercise and diet, through all these things, willpower, pushing against fear, sometimes running away from it, but always coming back to look it in the face and pushing forward. But yet, since he doesn't have a job with a paycheck, that seems to not mean shit. And that's a scary world for anyone who deals with it. I know a lot of people who listen to this would relate. Because why wouldn't we? If we've been conditioned to think that the societal structure of things that we are sort of presented with is that main path to life, it makes sense why we would think that our own personal achievements are not on par in value and weight as the things that we need to do in that system. And now I'm not here to say we need to fight against the system. That's not my goal. My goal is to just highlight that feeling because it makes sense. It makes sense to think that in this world where the things that matter include what you can do to be efficient, that the things that make you gratified without that efficiency necessarily, at least in the same way, they're kind of thrown under the rug, hidden, and just stomped on. You know, people walk all over that rug. They stomp on it. They feel something break, but they don't care to look because they're just focused on that forward path. And that is the path for so many of us, and many of us enjoy that path and are fulfilled by that path and should be. But those of us who want to take that different route, the people who want to feel like they have a path that's not just straightforward, but all over the place, different angles, turns, all these dips and rises up. You feel me? Like, that's something that should be rewarded, or at least highlighted as something important, As a human, whatever path you think you want to take, you should be able to take, as long as it doesn't involve like murder or anything like that. And, if we want to have some noble path of self-fulfillment and self-gratification, we can go and get that. But shit, man, there's going to be a lot of obstacles in the way. A lot of obstacles that are very hard to get through. A lot of them at least, are internal and emotional. They're inside of us. We have to sort of embrace this sort of harsh reality that's inside of our head when we feel inadequate and we feel like we're not going down the right path in the eyes of others because we want to pursue one for ourselves. We want to be gratified in what we do. We want to be able to wake up and enjoy the life we live, enjoy the job we have, enjoy the people we're around. We don't want to conform to a path that's not meant for us. We don't want to do that, and we shouldn't have to do that. But there's going to be a lot of hurdles that we have to jump over. A ton of hurdles that are tall, short, inches tall, feet tall, miles tall. Some of them we have to climb over. We can't even just jump over. We have to make some arduous trek to the top to get over them and go back down and realize that, we still got a lot more hurdles to go. And that one hurdle was just one challenge out of thousands we're going to face to be who we want to be. And that's extremely hard to swallow. With that comes other alternatives, though. We can go down that track, we can go down that obstacle course, and that's pretty much the main one that we're going to go down, the one with the big hurdles. But we can also veer off from that, go around some of the hurdles. We can find a way to cheat the race and go around them. And, calling it cheating is one thing, but what I mean is that we can find alternatives to the main beaten path to get to our path that we want for ourselves. And one of the things that I'm doing is trying to find a way to get Social Security disability benefits, which is demoralizing in itself, I have to say. I know I need it myself with my bipolar diagnoses, and that's just one of them. I can go into a very dangerous state of mind if I'm under enough emotional stress to the point where it is potentially dangerous to everyone involved. Because there is a difference between mental stress, like that I might find when doing the podcast or while exercising, when there's just a lot of stuff on my plate and I have to find a way to get through it, and the emotional distress and stress that might come from me feeling invalidated or hated by people around me or feeling inadequate. That stress is what causes my psychotic features and my manic features to manifest. It causes those episodes. So if I was to go into a work environment, which would almost certainly, if it went wrong, cause me to feel inadequate, cause me to feel like I'm not good enough, that people think I'm not good enough, that could potentially lead to something very dangerous. A psychotic or manic episode that's severe, that could cause some behaviors that are potentially harmful to me or someone else. So there is a real reason for me to go for it. Now, it would be temporary while I figure out how to further treat my bipolar and further, establish a path for myself with whatever it is. But it feels pretty demoralizing to go that route. It does. It feels almost like it's not this, but it feels like a cop-out. Feels like I kind of gave in to my fears and gave in to my anxieties and everything that comes with that. And kind of, maybe I'm just using my bipolar as an excuse. I'm not, but maybe I am. That's sort of the thought process. That's standard. It morphs your perception of yourself, and it morphs the thought process in which you use to decipher the world and everyone around you, and even how you view yourself. You decipher everything through it. And if that thing, that little tool you use to decipher things, has some sort of mistranslation that comes through it each time you try to use it, you're probably going to read the world wrong, and in that you'll read yourself wrong. It's almost impossible to break through sometimes. Because you want to tell yourself that you're needing to do more. That's almost the thing that you're conditioned to do so that you do more. But I talked about in my episode, it's pretty counterproductive. But it's something that's conditioned. And that conditioning is strongly rooted in that thought process. It's created a filter. And that filter, it takes everything joyous and everything rose-colored and makes it gray and damp and sorrowful. At least when I choose to apply that filter in a way. As if I have a choice. Whenever it manifests, I guess. And every time that I do it, it seems like it's going to get more and more bleak. More and more sorrowful. And I'm going to feel inadequate more and more each day that goes on. But what I do see in my rational state of mind, in my more serene moments, in my more calm and Buddha-like moments, I see a man who's accomplished tremendous things. I see a man who's done things that he never thought he could have. A man who's doing things that are so scary, yet so gratifying. A man who triumphs, and even when he falls, he lifts himself back up, and he ascends 1,000-fold. He does that. And even though he doesn't get that paycheck, even though he doesn't have that job in the employment, and even though whenever he talks to someone who hasn't seen him in a while or someone who he just met, he has to say, I'm unemployed, or even more embarrassing, that I'm going for disability, I can also say all the different things, if I really want to, that I've done well, if I really want to prove myself to others. Or I could take the other route and try to prove to myself what I've done, which is all out there. It's all on the table. I could literally just whip out a fucking binder and flip through pages and show myself all the great things I've done this year alone. And that should be enough. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it really isn't. A lot of times it isn't. But it is still something, even when it's not enough. And if I can strengthen the weight and value that that has in my heart, there is something I can do with it. Because every now and then, I get that spark, I get that ignition of a flame that makes me feel like I can glow like the sun. It makes me feel powerful when I think about the accomplishments and where I used to be, and now where I am currently. Now, if a lack of a paycheck takes away from that, I got a lot of work to do. And that's not a surprise to me. And it won't ever be anything different than that. I'll always have a ton of work to do. But I'll always make sure that I come back here and talk about it. And that adds a little bit more to that table of accomplishments and things I get to be proud of. A year ago, I would have fallen apart at the prospect of any of these bad things that have happened to me. I did fall apart. I'd fallen apart many times. And the feeling of inadequacy and shame and guilt often would have beaten me into submission. It doesn't anymore. Even if it does for a little bit, for a day, for less than a day, I always come back and I'm confident in that. That's something to be said. That is not an easy task. Much harder than me waking up in the morning, much harder than me clocking out, much harder than me clocking in, much harder than me sweeping floors, much harder than me handling dogs at a daycare, much harder than me doing drywall. Because this is deep and personal. It's rooted in struggle. It's rooted in trauma, in pain, in hardship. And I battle through it. Every day, every moment, every waking fucking second, I battle through it. So if I ever want to tell myself that I'm lazy or that I'm not working hard enough, maybe I should just look inward. Look at the mind and look at the work it's been doing. That mind is a part of me. It is me. And if I can work through it, if I can work through all of the pain with this mind I got and make that body of mine go do the hard stuff in the physical world, that emotional pain will start to seem a little bit less thick and heart-consuming. And that's an exciting reality, where I can feel good about myself based on everything I've done and keep working to make myself feel better. That's all for today. See ya!